Hey y'all, welcome back to Glam's Room. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. I'm very excited actually about this video because it's about meal planning. I am studying nutrition right now, so I am trying to practice and make sure that I'm kind of getting my experience now so that I can continue and be an expert when I get out of school and such. I actually meal plan for myself. I've been doing that for probably like over a year now since I started school a little bit in the beginning and more so as I continued into school. And now I actually meal plan for a doctor. It's cool when I say it like that. It's really a family friend, but she is doctor, okay? So I like to leave that second part out, make me sound all professional. But I started cooking for her last semester and I'm doing it again this semester. So I feel like I've perfected my craft, or at least in what foods I like to choose for them, make sure it's colorful, and also like portion size for the week for a family of 3. So I'm going to get into all those details and I am excited to share. I actually even added a meal that I will be including for them for the next week, but it's like a really good meal. So I wanted to make sure I included it because when am I going to make that again? Okay. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions, concerns, if you have any suggestions for meal planning. I could use the help because I've been making meals every week for like a semester, however many weeks that is. So I could use a little bit of creative insight. So I'm all ears. Make sure that you are subscribed so that you do not miss a video. Next week, we're going to be doing some Q&A, maybe give some juice about my life and maybe relationship talk, but let me know down in the comments what you would like to talk about or any questions that you have that I could answer for next week's video. I'm also going to be doing my nails because I got this new polygel set, so that should be a fun combo and a fun activity to do and share with y'all. Let's get into it. I don't want to ramble your head off. I just know that I needed an intro and y'all needed to know what's going on and y'all needed to see my face because the whole video is of me playing in the kitchen and cooking and being on food, so you don't really see my face. So I figured I'd give you a little taste. All right, let's get into it. All right, y'all, let's get right into it. As soon as I get home from the grocery store, the first thing that I'm doing is washing my produce. After I put my dry groceries away, those cold groceries are going in the sink and being washed. They're not even going into the fridge yet. And of course, I gotta wash out my sink first. I gotta work in a clean environment, okay? And shout out to my parents for being so bougie and having all these cool gadgets for the sink. I mean, that fits perfectly in the sink, that little strainer. And then we have that rack that slides out that I got folded up right now. We put our dishes on there to finish drying. But that's besides the point, y'all. Let's stay focused. So I've got my squash and zucchini, and I also have some bok choy that I am cleaning. So my brain kind of gets a little discombobulated whenever I'm shopping because I have to make 2 separate purchases for meal planning for the doctor and then meal planning for me and my family. So I try to keep it simple. Everybody's eating the same thing. So I've got a bok choy stock for me and the other family. I discovered bok chow or bok choy, I hope I'm saying it right, from a grocery store that I work at, and they're like the only place that I've seen that has these. So I was like, oh, let me do a little bit more research. Everybody's getting these. Like, I'm checking people out and they're getting these. I'm like, what is this? So I learned from one of my customers that it's part of the cabbage family and it's very high in fiber and other benefits and very popular in the Asian community. And I don't know about y'all, but I'm doing anything that the Asian community is doing because they're obviously doing something right. And as a nutritionist, I'm bound to believe that it is from the food. So this is me chopping my bok choy in half because the whole thing is not going to fit in the bowl and I want to clean it thoroughly, and it's going to be chopped up anyways. So now I'm going to add my baking soda and white vinegar. I just do about a tablespoon, sprinkle it all over, and then drop my white vinegar on top. Yes, we do try to clean thoroughly over here. I love to hear the sizzle whenever I'm cleaning my products. It makes me feel like it's doing something right, whatever chemical reaction is happening there. If you have any tips for cleaning produce with any ingredients or tools, please let me know down in the comments because I'm always willing to learn. I like to make sure my produce is completely submerged and then let it sit for about 15-20 minutes. So while that is sitting and marinating and getting clean, I am going to move on to my next thing that I meal prep for the week. So this one is for my family specifically. We love to make homemade granola because we have a whole bunch of packs of oats for some reason, and we just discovered that this was a great way to get rid of that. My family doesn't love oatmeal. There was one time where we were trying to do a bunch of overnight oats and it's not really a fan favorite for the family, so we decided to start making our own granola, and let me tell y'all, it is so good. It's definitely one of my favorite things to plan for the week because you can put whatever you want on it, and then I put it in my favorite concoction of like chia seed pudding, yogurt, fruits, and then the granola on top is so good. We're gonna get into that, so I'm gonna show y'all. Just wait. So we added some sunflower seeds, some flax seeds, some pumpkin seeds. I also chopped up some walnuts. I like to chop them up because them walnuts can get kind of big, and then it's like overbearing on the granola when it's supposed to be a mixture. It's just like walnuts and then granola, you know what I'm saying? And then I chopped up some dates because I figured might as well get some good fiber and some nutrients in there. I would actually recommend to put those once you take it out of the oven, like as putting it on top. I also added some other nuts. Don't know why I didn't chop those, but you know. And then I love to add a little bit of chocolate chips. I don't know why I did this. Sometimes I don't really be thinking things through. Put the chocolate chips on the granola after it comes out the oven because you're just gonna have melted chocolate all over the place and then it's not going dry correctly and then you're just gonna have a big chocolate mess. But I proceed to mix the chocolate in the granola, and it's actually a funny story because I put this granola in the oven, bear with me. It completely burned like black to the core, like rock solid, because we've been having problems with our oven. So I have to put it on like 450 degrees, and then I waited too long, and it just life happens. And so this batch actually went to waste, but my mama made me some more. So that's why I can correct my mistakes and tell y'all what to really do to make it the best of the best. Moving on, another family favorite, absolute favorite. Well, my family doesn't really eat it as much as I do, but I will literally go through 2 of these big bowls in a week. This is chia seed pudding. Chia seeds are really good in fiber, really good in omega-3 fatty acids. Pro nutrition tip, you need to be incorporating chia seeds into your diet at least once a day, and this is the way that I do it. If you don't like the texture of chia seed pudding, because that's the problem with my family, then I would try to at least add like a tablespoon into your smoothie or something, or on top of your yogurt, because they do have a lot of really good benefits. Definitely worth it. So for every 4 cups of chia seeds, you're going to add 1 cup of milk of your choice. I prefer coconut milk with the chia seed because that hint of coconut flavor, like, it is so good with the chia seed pudding. I did 10 tablespoons of chia seeds, so I'm doing 2.5 cups of coconut milk. Then I'm going to add my sweetener. I recently have been obsessed with honey. You can use agave. Once upon a time, I used to use maple syrup, and that was really good because maple syrup is a little bit of a stronger sweetener. And I personally believe that even though I put all this honey, it is still not going to be sweet. So sometimes if you like a little bit of a sweet tooth, then that maple syrup is really going to get you right. Also, pro tip for your chia seed pudding, to make sure that it doesn't clump up in certain places, make sure that you stir it really well the first time. Sometimes the chia seeds clump up at the bottom. Make sure that all of that is separated. Then let it sit for a couple minutes, maybe like 5-10. Stir it again, maybe a couple more minutes, stir it again, just to make sure that it is all completely separated, so that when you go back into your fridge, you don't want it to be clumped up or like inconsistent with the texture. And if you're feeling bougie, add a little bit of vanilla, maybe a little cinnamon on top. I promise you, you will not go wrong with a little bit of cinnamon. Oh, and feel free to bring in a little pinch of salt to bring out the sweetness and flavor. Cover that bad boy up and pop her in the fridge, and you are set for breakfast for the rest of the week. So now we are back to check on our produce. I also started washing some sushi rice because I wanted to try to make some sushi. I actually have had sushi every day since school started, and that's about 7 days, and they're each like $10, and I need to chill out, so I figured I'd make my own sushi. I was not prepared with my meal planning for the first couple weeks of school, so I'm definitely trying to get right. And sushi rice can get a little complicated because you're actually supposed to clean the rice for 30 minutes before you actually start cooking with it. So this is me cleaning it out, straining it, adding some water again, cleaning it out, straining it. And this has already been sitting for about 20-25 minutes, so I'm just doing some extra stuff. And now it's time to wash our next batch of produce. This is kale. My mom asked me what type of kale this is because I guess it doesn't look like that normal kale. I don't know what type of kale it is, and I'm sorry not to have the information. I just go to my produce section in my store and go to the organic lettuce, and I wanted kale this time instead of lettuce because it has more benefits. So whatever type of kale it is so good to make tuna wraps with. So this is me washing out my bok choy, bok chow, and squash and zucchini, just giving it a thorough rinse after being soaking in that baking soda and vinegar. So the kale is going to go through the same process, filling it up with water, adding that baking soda and vinegar, but I decided to cut the kale in half so that it can submerge in the water. Don't freak out and think that I'm making this big sacrifice just to fit it in the water. I always cut them in half whenever I'm getting ready to put tuna in them because they are really long, so a lot of tuna is going to fit in that little half. Also, pro tip, when you are using this as like a bread substitute, cut out the stem because that stem is hard as rocks and you are just going to spit it out when you start chewing it. So I like to cut as much of the stem as possible from the side without cutting a hole in it. And sometimes that is difficult. Sometimes you want the stem completely out, even if there's a hole in it. So do what you got to do because let me tell you something, that stem is tough. And if you wanted to make this vegan, this is a great raw vegan recipe where you use chickpeas and you mash them up and you use that as the makeshift tuna fish salad that you put into the kale. This is why I like to wash all my produce first so that whenever I'm ready to eat during the week, I can just run it under the water real quick before I start eating. And I don't mean to trip y'all up, but I'm fast forwarding to when the kale is finished. It's been about 15-20 minutes. I actually also started cleaning some string beans for the family that I'm cooking for because I like to think that I'm a multitasking queen. So we are doing two birds, one stone, especially in the kitchen. You got to make sure that you're doing everything at the same time and make sure that this is cooking while this is cleaning and that is being chopped while this is going in the oven. Like, you just got to know what you're doing. So I'm rinsing off the vinegar and baking soda concoction from my kale and the green beans here. And I skipped ahead so I can show you how I dry my kale and how it should be stored in the fridge, just because since we're on the topic already. So I put a towel down first before I do my paper towels, so I'm not using a bunch of paper towels and moisture can soak through the paper towels onto the actual towel. So here I'm spreading my kale out and I'm drying it before I put it in the fridge. You don't want to put leafy greens in the fridge when they're damp. So you'll also want to store your leafy greens with the paper towel wrapped around it. Especially with the kale, the ends are folded and the inside is really textured, so moisture can kind of hide in there. So do your best to dry them with a paper towel, and then I let them sit for a few minutes before I put them in the fridge. Now back to what I'm making for the other family. Now that the bok choy is clean, I am chopping it up so that I can get ready to saute it to make a nice soft curry cabbage. Please do not ask me why I'm using this little behind cutting board for this big behind vegetable. You'll see that later in the video. I have plenty of different types of cutting boards. I mean, the big cutting board is for meat, so I'm trying to differentiate, but I could have used a bigger cutting board, child. And then we're going to cut the squash and zucchini. I like to be simple with my vegetables because I don't want to cook them too much because I want to have as much nutrients in them as possible. And squash and zucchini are really good for your vitamins, vitamin C, vitamin A, also lots of potassium. So I like to, make my dish colorful and make sure that they are getting some different types of nutrients. And then I like to cut them up into little pieces. I feel like if they're big pieces, that's a lot of commitment in one bite. So it's easier to digest, especially if you're not a big squash or zucchini fan, then it's easier to eat them like this. So I do this just in case the kids aren't a big fan of the vegetables, but it's really good for you. So, I like to cut them small and season them up real good. For our next portion of our meal planning, I'm doing some shrimp scampi pasta for them. This is a different type of pasta though. This is cassava flour pasta. This does not taste like regular pasta. One thing about me, I'm gonna keep it real with y'all. Like when people say vegan cheese tastes the same as real cheese, they are lying. It does not taste the same. Cassava flour is supposed to be better for you. It is a root vegetable. It's got good starch and it's better than a lot of pastas have durum wheat in it. I did some research about durum wheat and it has a lot of terrible defects that lead to chronic diseases, and it's just one of those things that you say no to. But it is quite literally in every single pasta that you can find if it's not super expensive. I mean, they even have organic durum wheat. Just be careful, you guys. If you don't have a problem with it in your tummy, then do what you gotta do, but we are trying to stay away from that. Cassava flour pasta does cook differently though, so it's very hard to kind of get that perfect texture. Sometimes it could be too hard, it could be too soft, but you got to get it just right. So I was really trying to do my very best when cooking this pasta for somebody else because I do want them to have a healthier option, but I want to make sure that it is actually edible and tastes good. So y'all know I was following the box instructions to a T. And while I'm setting that to boil, I am finishing the last dish for meal planning. I am chopping up some carrots that I had already washed a couple days ago because I decided to do a bean salad. And this kind of sounds weird, but I wanted to be creative and, add some beans, add some carrots, different vegetables, and put them together. I'm kind of crazy and I just like to experiment. Also, don't come for me. I did not peel my carrots because I didn't want to. If you want to cut your carrots, that's on you, baby. So this mixture here is pinto beans and lima beans. I added my carrots and you'll see what else I add to it later on. But I'm going to let these boil to soften down and season it up while we go on to the next portion. So one thing I love about my store is they have such good deals on the weekends. This salmon is $8.99 a pound. So we got a whole fillet for like $30. And I get a store discount. I mean, you seriously cannot beat that. So I have a big family. We're definitely going to eat it during the week. But if we don't, then we put it in the freezer and we have it for the next week as well. I always dread this part about prepping the salmon just because it's so time consuming and it makes me get cramps in my arms, but I have to turn it over and descale the salmon. I do try to look at it in a positive way that I get to buy this whole thing of salmon for my family and I get to descale it myself, like coming straight from farm to table. And it is kind of satisfying to finish the whole fish and it goes from being scaly to nice and smooth. And one thing about it, I'm going to force my family to eat the skin because that is where all the minerals are packed. My mom was talking about, why are you descaling the fish? We don't even eat the skin. Like, girl, who don't eat the skin? You need to be eating the skin, just like you should eat the skin on the apple. All that nutrients is packed in there. And mini story time, when I first started buying salmon like this, I did not know that you had to descale it, so I was eating the skin with the scales. Lord of mercy. The other thing that I don't absolutely love about descaling the salmon is it does get very messy. Also, this is the big cutting board that I was talking about earlier, but as you can see, it is perfect size for salmon. Also, pro tip for cleaning or washing your meat or fish, please clean them with cold or lukewarm water at most. You can see the steam coming from the water, and that's just to clean off the cutting board. I want to make sure that none of the scales stick to the cutting board as I rinse it off. But as you can see here, you see no steam because that is cold water that I'm washing the salmon with, getting them scales off. Because if you start using too hot water, you are going to start cooking the fish at that point. And I know that some people use like hot water, they feel like it's getting the germs off, or you might use hot water to defrost the fish, but you are actually supposed to use cold to lukewarm at the most temperature water when you are defrosting or cleaning your fish or meat. I learned this in school, so don't tell me that I'm taking this out of my ass. Comment below if I just taught you something new that you are going to use as a tip whenever you are in the kitchen and you're going to think of me. And whenever you make a salmon or defrosting your chicken, you're going to remember that Amorous Glamorous told you to use cold/lukewarm water. Show some love in the comments. So once my girl is all cleaned up, we are going to chop her up. So I try to cut around 1 ounce pieces, but I'm totally eyeballing it. At the same time, I'm also trying to get as many slices out of the salmon as possible for my family and then for the family that I'm cooking for. And then depending on the salmon that I get, it could have thickness in different places. So I just try to cut based off of the thickness. Also, like, who cuts a salmon like that? Like, from the horizontal angle, like what was I doing? But I do what I do because it is what it is. So this is how I like to package my salmon. I like to dry it off and make sure that it's not like soaked in its own juices before I start packaging it up. And me and my family are trying to do a lot less aluminum foil, so we're wrapping it up in parchment paper, and I just like to fold the sides in and then wrap it around itself. That wasn't a really good angle view. So let's try that again. I like to fold in the sides. This is still a terrible view. I do apologize. But then I like to fold it around itself so that none of the juices are falling out, just in case there are any more, and I can put it in the freezer real nice and neat. Okay, so this is the best view. I feel like this gives the best security of the salmon and the parchment paper. I don't want to use any tape or nothing like that. So once I'm finished packing all of those up, I did leave 3 out, 2 for the family that I'm cooking for, and then 1 for me because I was hungry at this point. I mean, we're like 2.5 hours in. I need a lunch break, okay? My absolute favorite way to season salmon is with some Dijon mustard and some honey. Look, trust, do not knock it until you try it. It is the best seasoning flavor for salmon you will ever taste. So let me show y'all what I got cooking. The curry bok choy bok chow is done, and then I got the green beans mixed with the squash and zucchini boiling. I got the beans and the carrots and the onions boiling. I got some shrimp sauteing for the shrimp scampi. I got my sushi rice with some sesame seed oil and some no soy sauce. And that is actually my mama's little dish in the back corner for the family for dinner that night. They were doing some curry chicken. And air fried salmon with that Dijon mustard and honey is the best way that you can ever eat salmon ever in your life. Argue with your mama. And this is me on my little lunch break while everything is cooking and just needed some time. I decided to sneak a bite. My mama had made some lunch earlier, some noodles and shrimp, and I added my salmon to it because I'm trying to, bulk, pack on that protein, okay? And this is how I package up the food to deliver it to the home. They like to have a lot of sides, and then that salmon is meant to go with that bean salad. And let me tell y'all, do not come for me if you don't see too much seasoning on there, okay? I mixed the sofrito with the bean salad. If you don't know what sofrito is, it's a Spanish concoction where you add all your onions and your green peppers and your garlic and all that and your seasoning, and it's real good. But when it comes to making food for other people, you do not want to over season it. This family is not a family that likes spice, so I don't want to overdo it. I like to do the bare minimum, and then they add whatever they need to add to it, okay? This is me packaging up their food to deliver it to them in my car. I don't want nothing spilling around. You see, I've secured it inside the bag, and then putting the seatbelt on it because None of that juices is gonna be flying around, none of that, okay? So this is the next morning when the second batch of granola was finished by my mama because I literally burned the first one to a crisp. And this is the beautiful breakfast concoction that I like to make with yogurt, the granola, chia seed pudding, extra hemp seeds for extra protein, and the banana for the fruit. It tastes like banana pudding. So I take one day to commit to making food for the other family, and then when I get time throughout my classes during the week, I try to do little things for my family. Big meal wise, that's different from like the chia seed pudding or like the little things that you have to put together. So I actually got hard beans from the grocery store. We're trying to be as natural as possible, so we had to soak these overnight, and then we're boiling them now. These are the red beans, kidney beans, black beans, and chickpeas. And then what I'm doing here is boiling them again with some sofrito and some seasonings. Of course, I added some onions just to give it some flavor like I did with the other bean set, but this is just a different bean set for my family. And the same thing that I'm doing with the other bean salad for the other family, I am putting salmon with this bean salad. Air fried, of course, with honey and Dijon mustard, of course, and you can eat it hot or cold when it's with this mixture. So good. And this is just another clip later in the week of me making that yogurt concoction again. I'm telling you, it is so good. And then it is 20 grams of protein because my yogurt is 10 grams of protein. And then the hemp seeds adds an extra 10 grams of protein. So no protein powder, but 20 grams of protein for my morning yogurt breakfast concoction. And then chia seed pudding for your fiber. You got your nuts and granola. So this time I added strawberries and mangoes as my fruit instead of bananas to switch it up, you know? So fast forward to this week's meal planning. I wanted to include this week's meal planning along with last week's meal planning because I don't know the next time I'm going to be making this for them because I like to switch it up. I don't like to do the same thing like every couple weeks. And this was a really creative, I felt like was a really creative recipe. And I wanted to show you how I make homemade vegan mayonnaise because the first ingredient in regular vegan mayonnaise is canola oil and we do not mess with that. So you can use any milk alternative that you prefer. Make sure that it's unsweet though. And I just I don't do measurements. I'm so sorry, y'all. I like to start with a little bit at a time because I don't like my tuna salad too juicy. And then you're going to do like a capful of apple cider vinegar per can of tuna. So I did 3 cans, I did 3 capfuls. Then you're going to do a little bit of soy sauce to your liking and seasoning to your liking. Highly recommend you add in your celery and your green onions. You can also add cucumbers. Make sure you just add a little bit of green into there. I completely forgot to tell y'all about the Dijon mustard. That's like my favorite part. You're going to want to add in your Dijon mustard. I like to kind of go a little bit overboard because I like Dijon mustard and it also gives it that creaminess. But again, let your heart guide you. So what I'm doing with this tuna fish this time is I am putting it in spring rolls. I wanted to put it in spring rolls for the family that I'm cooking for just so that it travels well and it sits through the week well. And I also thought of this because I would like to take my tuna salad to school for lunch, but it gets too messy because I pack it separately and I do the tuna fish and the kale leaves and then put them together, but that's too much. So I needed a way to have everything in one little pack, like a little sushi, and I thought of spring rolls and I added some shredded carrots. And then for the family, I'm making it with romaine lettuce just because, you know, not everybody loves kale and the romaine lettuce does really well. And I also made a peanut sauce to go with it because you got to have your fats along with the rest of your balanced meal. And peanut sauce is so good with spring rolls. So you're going to take your no soy sauce, your sesame seed oil, some rice vinegar. Also, I used agave this time to give it a little bit of sweetness. You can use honey. It's supposed to be like a sweet sour taste. That's why I added wasabi ginger on top instead of chili flakes. Once you mix a couple of tablespoons of peanut butter and all of those ingredients to your liking, let your ancestors guide you, you're going to want to use hot water to mix it up and make it creamy. So now I'm packing these spring rolls in seaweed because that'll help them travel well and also preserve them and their softness. And again, it just goes well with the spring roll. All of those ingredients basically go with the seaweed anyways. The second meal that I wanted to share with y'all is vegan lasagna. I have never made lasagna before in my life, and vegan at that, so I definitely wanted to document this and share with y'all. I'm making vegan cheese with a potato and those soaking cashews that I had over there. And I tried to use green lentil pasta lasagna and some brown rice lasagna, and that did not go as planned, as you can see. I'm going to stop being embarrassed about showing y'all my mistakes because I was embarrassed to record the granola being burnt to a crisp, but y'all need to see how I'm learning, and it's okay to make a mistake and totally botch something like that. I figured this was my first time ever making lasagna, so I'm not going to make it harder than it needs to be. So my brother and I headed over to Publix real quick to grab some regular lasagna pasta, child. One thing about it, the store is down the road, so all else fails, I'm very grateful that we could just hop on over to Publix and the show can continue on. So this is after I've already boiled the regular pasta. It came out just fine, and I reheated my walnut pasta and vegan cheese. Oh, and I know I didn't show y'all the process of the vegan cheese being made. I wanted to show y'all the process of me putting it together, but you're going to blend a cup of cashews soaked and the whole potato, and probably like half a cup of milk and nutritional yeast, maybe like 2 tablespoons. And you're gonna blend that all together until it's nice and creamy. And you can even add a little bit more milk if you wanted it a little bit more creamy or like saucy. And then you're gonna take it to the stove and you're gonna heat it a little bit. Also, pro tip for the walnut pasta sauce, you might want to blend up the walnuts so that they are not as big and overwhelming. And the best results will come from soaking overnight or maybe boiling it for 10 minutes before. I just soaked them for a few hours from this morning until I was ready to cook this afternoon. I also was trying to spread out my cheese. I should have known to make more cheese because I'm a cheese person. Even if it was vegan cheese, making my own, I know I should have made extra, but I did what I did and I do what I do. So instead of the top layer being cheese, I'm just gonna add some extra pasta sauce and seasonings to cover the top. And I really wanted that cheesy, gooey, alternative in the middle so I can bite into that, and it's covering the walnut. And this is the finished product, y'all can see was already digging in. It tastes so good. I'm very impressed with myself, and future reference, definitely add more vegan cheese because that shit was delicious. Okay, so real quick for cleanup, I wanted to teach y'all a little bit about cast iron skillets. You see that I put the rest of the dishes in the dishwasher because they're non-stick, but non-stick pans have forever chemicals in them, as in forever in you and forever in your children, so we try to stay away from them slowly but surely. So invest in your cast iron pans, pro use for maintenance. You do not want to put dish soap on your cast iron pans. It will start to strip it away. I know that's triggering for some of y'all clean freaks, but that is the maintenance for a cast iron skillet. As soon as you're done with the cast iron skillet, you're going to bring it to the water and take all of the food off with a foil scrubber or your hands, and then you're going to soak the cast iron pan with oil. You want to make sure your skillet absorbs that oil for next use and to keep the water off of it and to keep the rust away. I was trying to show y'all a great example, but I put way too much oil on that first iron skillet, so I grabbed my other waffle maker cast iron skillet and distributed some oil there. Okay. Again, thank y'all so much for tuning in. I will see y'all next week to talk about some juicy topics. Make sure you're commenting down below what you want to hear me talk about. Okay, don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to share with your friends, because you knew you laughed a little bit and you learned something a little bit with meal planning and just something about me. So I feel like that was shareable content, right? I will see y'all next week.